Hey class, just waiting on some people to pile on in. Hey Nakara, what's up? How you been doing? Did you I know you submitted the bouncing ball project. Did you figure out, did you ask that question for your participation question, Nakara? Or did you figure out what was wrong based on my email for you? Okay, cool. I'm happy you utilized Bell for that. I'm doing good today. I think it's warm in my office right now. Hey Lena, what's up? But that's good. I'm happy that you worked with Bell to get that figured out. What did it end up being? Was there like were there extra keyframes, or did it have to do with interpreting the footage? Or hey Audrey. Hey Keith, what's up? All right. People are in the chat. We have some takers today. Let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to answer your participation questions, and then I am going to review the typography projects that have been turned in so far, and then I am going to start going over our next project, which is Real and Surreal. We're going to be working in Cinema 4D for this next project. Let me do something real quick. I already went and published this for you guys so you can start looking at it, but we're going to talk about everything starting today, and then we're going to go over the rest of it on Thursday as well. But it's here if you guys want to kind of get like an overview and an early look at it. I want to just make sure that I'm posting it early for people who are taking it online and not attending the live online classes. So whichever, like I said in the beginning of the semester, it's fluid. So if you guys want to swap back and forth, it's not a problem. The one thing I wanted to say, right, because when I was saying that we have a due date, but then it's available until a certain day, I'm going to start referring it to your due date range, right? So that you guys can start looking at it as, hey, I've got a week to turn this in. So the due date range for the Real and Surreal project is Monday, what day is that? Monday the 18th through Monday the 25th. So you have from then until then to turn this in, right? So if you guys turn your projects in within that week, range, you'll get full credit. Anything beyond that, and then we'll start docking points for it. So we're going to start just referring to it as due date range. I'm going to try and mentally remember that. But I just wanted to mention that for you guys. Nakara said that it was a mix of the graph and setting of the software when saving. Oh, okay. I'm curious what the graph thing, I understand. A lot of people have troubles with the graph. But the settings of the software when saving, that's an interesting one. I'm kind of curious about that one, but we can always talk about that later if you want. Keith says he's all right, just tired. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a year. But you guys are doing good, okay? So let's jump into these participation questions. We're going to start with Jade. I'm going to shut the music off for now. And then just let me know if audio levels are okay for you guys or if they're too loud or anything. Just shoot me a message in the chat and I'll adjust according. But here we go, Jade.
Hello, I'm Jenny. Do you know how to color this studio backdrop? I did the same thing that he did, like shot for the plastic cross. Drag it in, but it wasn't change anything.
All right, let me check that out again for you, Jade. I think what's going on.
Hello, I'm Jenny. Do you know how to color this studio backdrop? I did the same thing that he did, like shot for the...
Okay, here's the issue here. So any materials or objects, we're going to talk about this today as well, that have this little like red cube or whatever it is up in the corner, you guys want to kind of stay away from those objects for this semester. These or these materials, whatever it is, if it has this little red cube icon in the corner, it has to do with redshift rendering, which is a different rendering engine that you can use. And so they work specifically, these materials work specifically with that renderer. Instead, what I'd rather have you guys do is look for any kind of materials without that, and those ones should work. What will happen is exactly what you're running into, Jade. When you throw these materials onto an object, it will appear black right away. And so I'm not sure if we're going to get into that this semester. Usually this is something that is worked on later on in different semesters, but who knows? Maybe I'll look that up and we can see if we can start working with it. I kind of have to learn this renderer and how to use these materials on my own time for this. So it might be a possibility, but I would just not use these materials or any objects like this for future, and then you won't have that problem there. But yeah, this question usually comes up multiple times in the semester. I have a lot of students who will be like, why doesn't this work? If there's the red icon, stay away. That's just what I say. All right, let's move on to Audrey.
Hello. So
Audrey,
my question for this one is, I'm kind of confused about the last step for the typography assignment. I'm kind of confused on the contact information scene of your own design. Like, I get you have to put your own contact information, but like, I'm kind of confused by your own design. Do you have to like animate it our own way, or do we just like leave it be? And I think that's about it. That's all the question. I think that's the only question I got confused on.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. You want to create your own design of your own contact information. So you're going to have one that looks similar to mine, and then you're going to have another one that is of your own design. And that can be, you know, any other kind of design elements you want to add to the background, but just remember about animating those and animating those in your own way. So I don't want you to just copy again what I did. I don't, I want you to do something a little bit more elaborate and more unique. and to kind of think within the rules of typography and applying those to your animations. But yeah, that's really what it is. Lena said, I think Dr. Farina used the backdrop with that red circle in a Cinema 4D typography video channel. Okay, I'll make sure to. He probably used the redshift render or backdrop. So there's a backdrop that might work with that one. Let's see here. Let me open Cinema 4D real quick. It's opening off screen. Audrey, do you understand that a little bit better now, though? Send to frame. All right. Here's another issue I think that students had. So here's a studio backdrop that you can use. This one, notice that it's black for me as well. Let's choose a material. Let's pick a plastic one, similar to the one Jade was working with. We don't want a model. We want a material. Let's try using this blue one. No, it still shows up. Let's try the other scene. So I'm going to delete this. Delete this. Yeah, I think it's what did I type in? Backdrop. Studio. I'm like, what did I type in? Studio. Drop down models. Okay. It's not showing in here either. Okay, I'll show you guys how to make a studio backdrop here. Did this issue come up for you guys too when you typed in here? Presets. Did anyone else have a problem getting the studio backdrop? How do I want to do this? What do I want to do here? Let's use a plane. Let's increase. First of all, let's display it with the lines. Keith had the issue where you weren't able to see that. You were able to get the studio backdrop without the red circle. Okay, yeah, because usually it shows up here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's doing though. Let me try backdrop. Okay, nope, I'm still getting that issue. So you want to add a plastic material for a specific backdrop, but there is also a backdrop in the nodes as well. That's the one I think I'm looking for. Here, let's see. There usually is one. These look like material backdrops. I asked this question on my video, but you already answered that. Okay. Then maybe we can, we'll still look at your video, Keith, but maybe we could just kind of skip it. Unless I like, did I answer the entire thing for you? So what I would do is I would probably, let's just, how would I do my backdrop? You could do a cube and get it to length. Let's try the plane method. Let me just add some segments to here. A bunch of them because we want it to be smooth. We're going to lengthen this out, grab the end and lengthen it out this way. And then I think I'm going to, let's close this material editor. I'm going to hit C on my keyboard. And what that does is it creates the object as like an editable object. And then I'm going to grab a back end of this. Let me see. Maybe I did this. Let me start off with the cube might be easier. Increase the length, the width, and the height. So it's kind of, just go like this. And then we're going to make this an editable object. We're actually going to do this today as well. And then I want to go up here into polygon mode. And I'm going to select these polygons here and I'm going to delete them until I just have two sides. And then I'm going to go back into this button right here, which is object mode. If I can correctly grab it. And then I want to, I might still want to change the properties of it. Bringing it up like this a little bit, bringing it definitely out like this more. Maybe turn my camera more. And then we want to add a subdivision surface to this. Drop the cube into that subdivision surface. I think that is incorrect there. Let me see. It is because I didn't increase the amount of segments on this object. So each side, there's only 6 sides to this cube right now. And so when you want to avoid the red cubes, yeah, that's exactly, avoid the red cubes. But there's only 6 sides to this cube that I've put into my scene right now. And what we want to do is we want to increase the segments of that, because essentially what we're going to do is we're going to smooth it out. But with only 6 sides, it doesn't do much smoothing. So we have to add more like faces, is what I call them, or polygons, to the object in order to be able to smooth that out. And so over here in the corner, let me see if I can zoom in here so you guys can see. Come on. Perfect. There are options for different segments here, and we're just going to increase those by a bunch. So I'm going to increase this amount, probably even more. Just type in 25 for each side. 25, 25, 25. All right, so we have a lot of geometry here, but we're not going to be animating this, specifically the backdrop, so that's not a big deal. And then we want to make this an editable object. So you have to do this before you turn this object into something editable. And editable, kind of what that means is you're able to pull this object apart and start working with each little facet of the object versus it being kind of grouped together all in one mesh essentially. And you can't really undo this, and so you want to make sure that you've got your base object set up the way you want before you start to edit everything separately. And so that's why I'm saying you want to make sure you increase any segments if you're going to do that before you do this step. And so I'm going to hit C on my keyboard to turn this into an editable object. Notice that when I did that, let me see here. This little icon will change from a cube to like a triangle with little circles on the edge, which indicates that you can edit like points and faces and things like that. So I'm going to hit C. And then I am going to go in here to faces, and I am going to just kind of mass select a bunch of these. I probably made way too many, to be honest. Nope, wrong one. Yeah, I made way too many. Having fun doing this like this on here. Probably just like, let's do 5, 5. I think that should be good. I don't think we need Z segments. We don't need Z segments. We're not going that direction. So just 1 this way. Really just increase this amount. So we'll do like 10 here, right? And then turning that object editable by hitting C. And then we're going to go into the face mode up here, polygon mode. And I'm just going to grab this and delete it. Grab these all and delete these as well. Same with all these. I think I can click and drag. Let me delete those. Click and drag and select? No, just holding down shift and clicking on these and selecting. There's an easier way to create a, I know there is. Okay, so we've got a bunch of these segments here, and now I'm going to throw it into a subdivision service because there's not a, let me bring that in here. And then you kind of get this rounded like edge there. I'm going to, you might have wanted to, you're going to want to add the segments around the, I think it was the Z space as well, so that you get extra segments on this side. But I'm just going to move, let me see. Grab my cube directly. I want to do this with the plane. I'm sorry, you guys. This is driving me nuts. Plane. Let's bring our camera back. It looks like there's extra segments here because there are. Let's just increase this one 20 and 1, and then make this editable C. And then grab this tool, like the edge tool, and grab this top edge and hit T. I'm sorry, E to bring it up. And grab a bunch of them. Actually, let me grab several. This one, this one, this one. Probably this. Probably a good amount. And I'm going to bring them up. I might be able to do this after I do the subdivision service. There we go. And then you can bring this up. There's got to be a better way to make it look nicer than that. Let me see here. But yeah, before there used to be just a backdrop that you could use, a studio backdrop. I'm not sure why it's not there anymore. It used to be like this blue stage that would look like this, but not exactly. Let's bring this back in. I want to see what they did. I'm going to delete this. Change the angle. Zoom out, move in. Yeah, theirs is a plane too. So yeah, theirs is a plane with multiple things as well. Let me look into this a little bit more for you guys. But other than that, you can grab the plane and you can move it up, the polygons up to create your own backdrop. Let me see. And then you can add like a different material. So if I were to type in the materials here, plastic, I would unfurl models because I don't want to see that one. Let's do all. I would hide that one and I would use plastics like this. And then what you can do is you can go into those in the material editor when you open this area up, and you can actually edit like colors and things like that in it. So, which is nice. I'll show you guys how to do that a little bit today. If not today, we'll get to it on Thursday. Actually, let's not. I didn't mean to quit it, but all right, Nakara, let's get to your question.
So my question of the week was like when I started opening my projects for just the first animation, like for the bouncing balls, some of like my animations would be like a little bit choppy, and when I try to implement what's it called, Cinema 4D to After Effects, it wouldn't do like picture by picture in like the PNGs and then upload it to a video. It would just be one of like one frame of it. So those are just my questions.
Yeah, and you got that figured out. So, but good question. I'm happy that you utilized Bell. That's another thing I want to let you guys know is if you want the question answered earlier and I'm not available to answer that question, even if it is your participation question, go ahead and you can grab assistance from Belle as well, and she'll be able to help walk you because she's got dedicated time slots where she's available for tutoring, which helps out, especially because I'm not always available right away. Sometimes it takes me a day to get to your guys' questions, especially if, if you send them email, Canvas, or Slack. I'm gonna see your questions a lot quicker if it's in Slack because I have Slack opened all day while I'm working my other job. And so I see those notifications as they come in. Versus like email or in Canvas, I might check them like once a day, so it's just a little easier to get a hold of me that way if you need instant help. But I'm happy you did use this for your participation question, even though you had it answered like you probably did this first and then had Belle help you. So good job on that, Nakara. Let's go to Lily.
For this week, I don't really have a question. It's more of just a concern. But it was mentioned in this video, like if anyone in class had a Mac, and I do have a Mac. Let me see about this Mac. I have a MacBook Pro. It's all like the details, but it was said that Cinema 4D, like every other like the Adobe ones, they're fine, but like Cinema 4D, you were saying that like there might be some issues, and I'm just like wondering like what I should look out for when I'm using Cinema 4D as a Mac user.
So essentially what's going to happen is it's just going to have problems running the program. I'm not sure if it comes down to your CPU or GPU where the issue lies, but sometimes Macs will just have a harder time running that program than other times. You can continue trying as much as you can. I would suggest to rent a laptop out. I haven't played around with the MacBook Pros. But in general, I've had iMacs before that once you start creating heavy Cinema 4D projects, they just kind of shut down. They don't really work very well. It'll have a hard time. It's very, very slow. Um, but it kind of just depends on what your processor and what your graphics card are like, right? So what your CPU and GPU are like. It might run it okay. You might not have any problems in this class. You might have problems in future classes where it's all Cinema 4D stuff. But if you do start running into issues, I highly suggest renting a computer out from the tech lab or HT1, like in that area, because those computers were purposely purchased for the use of working in Adobe and Cinema 4D. And so that's just kind of my recommendation there. You can always send me your specifications of your CPU and GPU over Slack or inside of Canvas, and I can look at them and we can see if they're going to meet the minimum qualifications of what it takes to run and work inside of Cinema 4D. But just sometimes you will run into issues where it just doesn't work, and you don't want that to become an issue further into this class because like I said, once you start getting behind, it's kind of harder to catch up. And so we just try and avoid that right away. Another thing you guys could do is if there are no computers to rent out at the school, I would just recommend using the computers in the HT1 lab because those are able to run the programs as well. It does take a while though to render things. I think what will happen, especially this project this week, is going to be a little bit more intensive on your hardware, and you guys are slowly going to start to get how long it takes to render things and turn these into actual video format. And so you don't want to be stuck at the HT1 lab forever. So if you have the opportunity to rent one, I would just do it because so you don't kind of run into this issue in the middle of class when that happens. But good question. All right, let's go to Josh.
So,
What's up,
honestly,
Josh?
I was kind of just curious, like in digital media arts, what career would utilize more of typography?
Advertising and marketing, hands down. I mean, obviously, if you do, there's some people who just create um like the intros and outro, like for films and stuff. You have the title sequences, and there are people who focus on those, and that's all. I mean, that's half of it is typography because it's introducing the cast or giving the credits at the end. But usually, I mean, like credits are obviously just a slow rolling thing, so that's not that big of a deal. But uh really, you're going to find it in marketing. So when you guys are watching TV, I want you to pick out how many commercials you see that have text in them, right? And so you're going to see um a lot of like medical um commercials. So things for medications and new trials and clinical things will have a lot of that. Cell phone commercials have a ton of it. Like, so I just start watching when you're watching television, just start like clocking that stuff when you're watching it and being like, oh wow, there is a ton of typography inside of animation. Web ads, web banners, social media ads, all those kind of things that you do in the marketing and advertising field, they all utilize typography because most of the time you're not like, you're not creating a full-length feature film. With films, you don't want type. You really don't want a lot of type in there unless it's part of the aesthetic of the film. For instance, like I don't know if you guys watched the Mitchells versus the Machines. Did you guys see that on Netflix? I thought that was really cool. But there was typography in there because it was very comic book style, kind of like Scott Pilgrim esque, just kind of boom, 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 things popping up on screen. So there's like type on there, which is fine. But in films, you want the visuals to tell the story. You don't want text on screen, really. Um, and so you're not going to see it in the filming industry, but you are going to see it in advertising everywhere. It's all over in advertising and marketing. So good question, though. Let me go to Melissa.
Hello. I was wondering in After Effects, it wouldn't push play even if I were to push the backspace button or the space button. And I was wondering if there was a way to fix that or if there was a workaround. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, that is interesting. So when you're, because you have to make sure in order to have it play, right? You want to make sure that your timeline panel is selected down here or that your composition panel is selected right here. If you're selecting, if you're trying to play it, but your selection is on the project panel or on the properties panel over here or effects, it's not going to play. So you want to make sure that you're selected on this panel right here, which is your timeline, or your panel up here. Let's see if in the preferences of After Effects we can see the playback options. Let's go to last week's After Effects. Right. So, if you guys are like having issues and stuff sometimes with things in, ooh, did I mess around with this one? What is happening here? I was showing you guys this, not these things. This is not correct. Hold on. My panels are all wonky. Let's reset to saved layout. Okay, there we go. That's what I mean by like sometimes things will open up and you'll be like, what is this? What is happening there? And so you just want to reset to up here in your little hamburger menu, reset to saved, and it'll bring it all here. Cause I was just like, these aren't supposed to be up here. So if you ever want to go into your project settings, or not that one, sorry, it is your under edit up at the top, and you go under preferences and you can just click on general and it'll open up like this box that has all these options for you to go into. So previews, appearance, video preview. Oh, hold on one second. There we go. I'm not quite sure why that is having an issue for you, but in here you're able to make some changes. For instance, I know this one's off topic, but if you want all of your anchor points when you draw shapes to start off in the center of your object or your shape, whatever you draw, you can check this box right here, check anchor point, center anchor point in a new shape layer, and then it'll always center it. And then you can manually move it with your anchor point tool, which, by the way, I know last class I said that I thought there was an option to, with like a free program for the anchor point tool to do that, but it's no longer free. It's I think it's $4.99 now. I can always put that as an option for you guys inside of Slack, and then show you a little video on what happens in case you guys do want to buy that, and then you guys can utilize that if you want to, but that would have to be an out-of-pocket expense. It's not that expensive. It's not a requirement, but just another option for you guys. But yeah, you can always select that there to change your preferences, and you'll hit OK. I'm curious if you're having an issue with your preview stuff because your disk cache and media cache are overloaded, which shouldn't be the case, but I would try this first. So when things start playing back really slowly, or you have issues with playback when you do hit the space bar, right? So when I bring my playhead in here and I hit the space bar, and it's like chugging really slowly, what I would do is I would come up here under File, and then, I'm sorry, again under Edit, and then there's a section called Purge. And then you want to purge all your memory and disk cache. So that is going to, because After Effects keeps the memory of what you're working on so that it can play it back to you live, right? But that memory eventually builds up too much space, and it needs to be cleared out. And so when you start having problems like that, the first thing I would do is go up to Edit, to Purge, and all memory and disk cache. Notice right here what's going to happen when I hit OK. You see that this line right here is all green. And that means that it's been rendered through, that it hasn't rendered it, right? But it's done a preview render so that you can watch what you've done when you hit the space bars to preview it. And so, because it needs to kind of render that in order for you to see what's happening live. And so it will show a green bar when that's all been rendered for you to see. And so if I were to hit space, it would smoothly run through it. Now, if it were blue, that means that it's like in the process of doing a quick preview render for you. And you'll see what'll happen is as you're playing, it's kind of chugging along, stopping, skipping, and then the little green line is going to try and keep up with that blue line so that you get the full live render. Well, then any changes that you make is going to go back to the blue line, and then it's going to have to re-render that for your preview. But when I clear this out, it's going to wipe all that preview information away, and it's going to give me this blue bar, right? I have a lot of dedicated storage to After Effects here. Some of you guys will only have like 20 gigs, 15 gigs. I had 118 stored up, so it's been a while since I've done that. My program is slightly frozen right now. It's still emptying that cache. But notice how it kind of went blank, right? And so as I play this, my computer works very quickly, so it's kind of hard example to show you guys, but sometimes you'll see that blue line. Mine just does it really quickly. But notice how it was trying to do that preview render for me. So I would try that first. And if that doesn't work for you when you play back, then send me another message, Melissa, and we'll try and get that figured out for you, because you need to be able to preview your stuff. Any questions so far in the chat? All right, we're going to go to Jesus while I'm waiting on any questions.
Hello. Will there be a specific module to where you'll be answering the participation grade questions, or will it just be in the beginning of each assignment video? And another thing is, will we be working with...
So let me answer that real quickly. Yeah, we do it under like our class videos. I answered the questions live so that you guys can get examples with it, versus like if I were to answer these inside of Canvas, it's not very beneficial to the rest of the class because they can't see, first of all, your questions that you have, because a lot of people end up having similar questions. And so they can't see those questions and hear, nor do they hear those questions being answered. And that's why I answer your participation questions live in class. I know it takes up almost like an entire class period, but it's important for you guys to see that other people have these same issues and how to solve those issues. Or, right, if there are upcoming issues. This media cache thing is something that you guys will eventually run into. And so it's good you guys know this now, that when things start working slow, that to clear out that media cache, and that should help out with like playback speed and stuff. So I'm hoping that helps Melissa, but that's the reason I answer these live in class. So all of your answers will always be just on the video recording, like the live online or previous live classes from the current semester.
3D and 4D throughout the semester alongside with After Effects and 2D, because 3D is a lot harder for me to comprehend and understand coherently alongside with After Effects, as when it gets jumbled up I tend to get mixed up a lot, and it's harder for me to keep up.
Yeah, I think that I think students tend to excel in one form of animation versus the other form of animation. There's some students who pick up both very quickly, and there are other students who have a little bit, it takes them longer to like grasp other concepts, which is normal, right? We're all at different levels of learning and all at different skill levels when it comes to these classes. Now, this class is going to be a pretty even mix of After Effects and Cinema 4D, and we use them together, right? So we're going to be working inside of Cinema 4D, bringing those things into After Effects and exporting them out. And so it's important to set aside enough time in the week to really get to understand the concepts that we're working in, and take your time, because you might have to rewatch things, which is normal. I understand that. I have to rewatch things a couple times to really grasp concepts sometimes. And so, I understand your concern there, Jesus. What I would do is make sure that you're utilizing Belle or I when I have time outside of there, and when Belle has her hours of tutoring, utilize both of us so that you can get any kind of extra help that you need with that kind of stuff in order to grasp those concepts, because the class is, like I said, pretty evenly distributed between 3D and 2D animation, and we will be working with both of them. So if that's a further concern to you, just let me know, and we can always talk about any kind of solution. But thank you for bringing that up. All right, Keith, I'm still going to play yours because why not?
Hello, I had a few questions.
Also, this little guy
One in
in here is
particular
cute.
was the software for Cinema 4D, which we were doing the names at the end. Well, one of my issues was in the video, the tutorial says to pick the studio backdrop, and for some reason I have
Notice-
this weird red logo, but when I
Okay.
drag it in, there's
This is what I'm looking for. Yeah, the node operator one that you're talking about. That one should be in. That option should have been in mine, but I'm not seeing it for some reason. And so use this one, you guys, and not this one up here. Use this one right here. Yay, good. Use that one because it doesn't have that little red. Essentially what Keith said, avoid the red cubes. I don't know if you guys are D&D fans, but those
nothing
gelatinous cubes in D&D that can swallow you and engulf you, and they're naughty. They're bad. They look fun, but they're not fun. Yeah, let's avoid them like those gelatinous cubes.
like there's absolutely nothing, and it's like missing. I think it's missing some sort of material.
Yeah, it has to do with the redshift renderer.
So when I did my own, I had to actually use a different one. I used the regular node operator backdrop. But in the tutorial videos, they wanted you to use studio backdrop, but for some reason I just had no like asset or material set for that one for some reason. So I don't know if it's something I'm missing or I didn't install, but that's basically my only question.
No, it wasn't you guys. I just wasn't aware that Dr. Farina had that one in there. That was my fault for not knowing that, and so I'll change that for you guys. I'll make sure to either add a note for future classes or to let you guys know and update that here soon, because you still have time to turn in the typography project if you haven't done so yet. All right, let me go to Lena.
Hi, I'm Lena.
Hey, Lena.
And the first few questions I have are for C4D, for the typography project. So when I get to C4D, I had trouble with putting the backdrop on. When I was following Dr.
Yeah.
Farina's video, the backdrop, I tried to click on this. And do you know what this red dot here means? Does it mean that it's locked or something? Because when I dragged it over and then
Hey, this is Jonas from
put it there, let me move it, it was black. And on the video, Dr. Farina's backdrop was white, but it was the same one. But then as I was messing around with it more, I went to the backdrop layer, and then there was this kind of warning sign. Do you know what that is? But when I deleted that kind of triangular sign, it turned white. So it looked exactly the same as his video. But because I didn't know that before, I actually... Let me delete this. Because I didn't know I could turn it white before, I actually picked a different backdrop. I picked this backdrop. Perfect. Because I thought the other one was locked or something, so... And now it looks like this. So I dropped it on.
That's perfect.
So
that
is it okay
nice.
that I used this backdrop instead of...
Yes, it is okay.
The one in the video? I was just wondering if it will affect my project in any way. And my second question is there a way to shift the timeline? Because I took a screenshot of this. I accidentally shifted it over so they were just negative numbers, but I didn't know how to get this 0 back to the end.
So hitting H should recenter your that should recenter your timeline. Let me hear if you did that.
Just like how you would shift it in Adobe After Effects.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated.
Another question is...
But just hitting
let's
H.
get back to OBS.
Hitting H as in Harry on in your timeline when you're kind of hovering over here will reset that into like the area. The thing is, if you don't have keyframes on there, it might not do that, right? Because it doesn't know where to center it. It's centering your keyframes for you so you can see all of the keyframe range. But if there's nothing on your timeline, then I believe you just hit you hold down 1 or 2 and that will shuttle it's called shuttling the timeline for you. Here, let me just open this and double check that those are the correct. It might be Alt. I'm going to find out right now. Unless I'm very muscle memory, so unless it's open and I'm doing it, I'm like, which one is it? So let's test out my theory on which one it is. 1 second here. I accidentally shut something down. That's not what I wanted to look at. This one here. Okay. Let me bring that one down. I think it's clicking. Okay. So it's holding down the number 1 and clicking on your mouse, not on your mouth. Please don't do that. Clicking the left key or the left trigger on your mouse and then just moving side to side, left and right, and that'll or even up and down, it doesn't matter. But if you're holding down the number 1 and just clicking the left mouse button and then dragging, it will move that back, so you can kind of bring that back there. If I'm here and I hit H, it doesn't work because I don't have any keyframes on there. All right, do you know what that triangular warning sign was next to the backdrop layer? I think it had something to do with, the material specifically, because let's see if it does it again. Let's type in studio here and see if I get the same issue. Yeah, so mine's not showing that, but let's just mess around with, let's bring this back on here. to look at that. So this, if I hover over it and don't click anything, just hovering, it says it's a material tag that is on my backdrop, right? So it's telling me what it is and where it's located. And so if I double click on that, it brings this up here. It says down here, let me move my camera real quick. Move it down this way real quick. It says the node space doesn't exist. Click to add and create a node space. It's because we're working in the redshift renderer. Maybe we can try doing that. Ah, okay, so that added a node space. So we're learning things right now, you guys. Okay. So then if I double click on this, if I go into wrong, that is wrong. Sorry, you guys. If I go back into this view and I click on that and I double click on my material, you're going to notice that it's going to be, this is a much more complicated way to create materials, although it's more efficient. And this is something you learn in later classes and you don't necessarily learn here, but who knows? Like I said, I might just try and figure this out for you guys so that I can teach this to you guys in the beginning of class, and that way you can start messing around with them before you go into these other 3D courses with Dr. Farina, right? So let me look into this. Let's see if we can change color stuff. If I don't double click on that, ooh, what did I do there? Click on this, remove that, add that. I think I could, let's see if that'll work with an actual material that's a redshift material, right? So let's type in plastic again, because that was a good one to find a redshift material. I'm going to drag and drop that on, and it still goes black. But we can't, you notice here, we can't change anything. So it has to do with the renderer and probably some viewport settings here. So I just wouldn't, like, I would still just stay away from those. And while I was talking about stuff, I think I would do, let me see here. Let's delete that. Yeah, I would just use that one backdrop, which is fine. And then just put like a regular plastic one. But the warning sign is saying that there's something not happening there. That's the reason that it was black, is because something's not adding up, obviously. And so you have to fix some settings in order for it to be working properly, in working order. I apologize. But in the meantime, let's just leave it at that. You can also do, let's see here. We can create a backdrop using one of these. I was just kind of thinking about this while I was looking. So I would probably take this spline, right? Because these are splines. And I would take a rectangle spline, and what I would do is hit C to turn it into an editable object. And I would go up in here to point mode. So there's obviously different modes. There's point mode. There's edge mode, where you can select the edges. These are like selecting the little vertices or the little, okay, you guys can see. Yeah, I just had to make sure my camera wasn't in the way because I remembered that I moved it. But these are for your vertices. These are for the edges. These are for the faces or the sides. It's polygon mode. And then here's the entire object. So if you want to select the entire object and not little parts or pieces of it, you want to make sure you're in this mode. But so we're going to grab into point mode right there, and I'm going to select this point right here, and I'm going to delete it. And I'm probably going to need to, I want to unjoin these. Let's see here. disconnect. Does that work? Break segment. Let's try that. Ooh, that was wrong. So let me see if I grab my edge mode. Let's go back. See if we can do this a different way. Come on now. Delete that. It won't do the edge mode if I can select this and this together. I'm going to figure this out for you guys because there used to be. Undo that. Like this, I could chamfer this edge here, and then you add on stuff. I'm going to try this a couple different ways and see if I can do it differently for you guys. But in the meantime, use that one backdrop. All right, I'm going to keep playing this, Lena.
Is there a way to copy and paste my keyframes in here? Because I extended this to 8 seconds, so I wanted to copy this keyframe.
Holding down control and dragging. So holding down control, clicking and dragging the keyframes will duplicate those for you. So like if I had, let's just delete this real quick. Let's open this up. And I just throw some kind of shape in here, a Homer donut, right? And I've got it animating from here. We'll just position there. I'll move this forward a few frames, and then I'll change the position. I'll keyframe it. And then let's say over here, I wanted to duplicate these first ones. I'm going to click and drag. Okay, you guys can't see this. Let me move my face over here. My brain is working today. I promise you guys that. Just a little slower than normal. So I over here created keyframes, moved forward, created another keyframes after I changed the position, and now I want it to go back to the original position. I'm going to click and drag and select those keyframes, and holding down control, I'm going to click and drag those keyframes out to wherever I want them to be, and that's going to duplicate the keyframes for you. So now it's going to bounce. It's going to move forward and then bounce back into the same position as the beginning, right? And so that's how you duplicate your keyframes inside of Cinema 4D. Now you can click and so let's say I wanted to do it again. I can select multiple. In fact, I could I would grab it like that because I want it to move out again, holding down control and clicking and dragging. And you can, infinitely select more and make it longer and longer and longer if you want to. There's ways to loop things differently inside of After Effects and Cinema 4D, but that's just a quick way to duplicate keyframes inside of Cinema 4D. You can also, I think, duplicate objects that way inside of Cinema 4D. If I hold down control and I click and drag, I will have other ones here, right? But they look like they're all stuck together. But they're all going to contain the same animations because it's an exact duplicate of each one. Now there's a difference here, and we're going to talk more about this today whenever we get to the lesson, either today or on Thursday. But these are actual duplications, right? So if I go in here and I grab this first torus that I created, or if I grab this one, let's see where this one is, right there. And I wanted to scale it down. So, or scale it smaller. Let's do it like this. It's just going to scale that one object because these ones are duplicates, so they have their own values and stuff. If these were instances, which I think how to create an instance of it, is it control drag? I would have to figure that out, but we'll create instances later with some of the objects here in class. And those, if you start to change like the scale or rotation or anything, those instances are tied to the original. And so anything that you change on that original will subsequently change your instances. Versus when you're duplicating objects, it will not do that. You have to go in and manually change those. So yeah, good questions there though.
Again to the end over here somewhere, because I tried Control C, Control V, but it didn't really work. So is there a keyboard shortcut for that? Another question, another problem I ran into in After Effects is I watched Dr. Farina's video on how to speed the renders up for C4D. So I changed the render settings to 1280 by 720,
which is standard
and I made
definition.
sure to check that box. Well, check a certain box in the video. But when I imported it into After Effects, it turned out like this. As you can see, it didn't fill up the whole.
Yeah, so the reason of that is because it's a smaller size. So we work in 1920 by 1080, right? But if you guys need to change your because it's not rendering fast enough and it with your C4D projects, and you need to change that to 1280 by 720, which is just standard definition. So that's SD, right? If you're watching TVs and you hear, oh, that's an SD, that's standard definition, that's 1280 by 720. And if you're working in high definition, that's 1920 by 1080, right? And then you've got, then you've got 4K and then 8K. And so it keeps going up and higher and higher. We're never going to work in 4K in this class. People don't really create animations all the time in 4K. At least you're not going to be doing it here in school right now, because it's heavy. It's very heavy on computers because they have to make it twice as big. So it takes a lot longer to render out that stuff. But eventually you can animate things in that. Plus, most people are watching these little animations like on their phones or on just general computers where people don't necessarily have like OLED panels that they're watching or anything like that. So, what you just have to do in that instance is just scale the image up until it fills in you'll scale that, you will scale this right here. Your scale transform property of your PNG sequence until it fills up the area, and that'll be fine. But then your final render will be 1920 by 1080. Does that help you out, Lena?
Screen. So what I had to do was scale this until
perfect.
It looked like this.
That's fine. Yep, that's perfect. You did exactly what you should have done.
This. Yeah, I had to scale it like this. Will that distort the render, or is there a better way to do that? Finally, every time I open up After Effects, I always get this pop-up in After Effects that says Mercury 3D is not supported by the current hardware. Here, let me enlarge this. So I get this pop-up. Is this especially important, and do I have to worry about this?
Let's look that up right now.
Well,
it has to do with the rendering process, I think. Mercury 3D is not supported by the current hardware. sorry. I'm just looking this up real quick for you. All right. Let's bring this over. Let's read the more recent one. This is exactly what I do. If I get these errors while I'm working, all I do is I go into Google and I type the exact error message that I'm getting. This is something that you guys are going to have to learn how to do, is like troubleshooting errors. You know, right now while you're in an introductory class, like I'm going to help you go through them and try and figure out what's going on. But when you're off on your own, you're going to have to learn how to kind of look these up and find out solutions by yourself. Like, let's say you're freelancing, you know, you either have a select group of people that you can utilize for support, right? Because you've networked those people, or you just kind of have to figure it out on your own. And so what I do is I usually type in these errors. You can go to the Adobe Community Support and you can post these, and there's someone usually that works with Adobe that will help to figure these issues out for you, right? But let's see. It says it doesn't affect the After Effects functionality, and you can choose never again in the dialog box to stop seeing it. Of which hardware we have to update. You're not using a beta build, so don't worry. Huh. So it looks like it's saying, is your graphic card driver the latest? In particular, your current, nobody can tell what needs to be adjusted or updated. Okay, so it has to do with your VRAM. And what VRAM is it's basically refers to a type of like random access memory of your RAM. But it's specifically used to store image data for computer display, like quickly to be able to bring that up. Let me see how to change that. This might be something I have to look into a little bit further so we can move forward with going through your guys' projects, but as long as is it functioning okay for you, Lena? Like, are you having issues while you're working?
Well, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Let me know if it's having issues while you're working, because that might be something that we change inside. I'm trying to think. Because I know I've had this issue come up, specifically when I was using an iMac, actually. So, Lily, I don't know if this will pertain to you, like if you have this issue. If it's not affecting the functionality, you can go ahead and click the do not see again. But let's see if it has anything to do with on here. Nope, Adobe works well. Okay, so you can maybe check that and memory and hardware performance. I know there's like a, can I move down this way? I can. This is maybe something that I should add into our lessons, like going through these different outputs and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, let me look into that for you, Lena, and I'll check that out. In the meantime, you can go ahead and click don't see again, and then you can change that as long as it's not affecting the way it runs. As soon as it starts affecting the way it runs, and that's where the issue runs into. But I'll look more into that because sometimes going through these forums takes like a while, right? It's not that easy. So let's go to, I think we have one more question, and then we can go to the submissions here. Yeah. All right, Jasmine.
Hello. For this week, I don't have any questions. I actually went to see Vel today, and she was really helpful explaining
Awesome.
Cinema 4D, which was the one that was struggling the most, and I had so many questions. But I can share something I learned today.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love this stuff.
This one. Basically, she helped me figure out how to move around the program.
We're going to talk about that today.
Like, you can press Control-1 and you can like drag.
Yep.
Not control. You can just press 1 and drag.
Yep.
And then
2
press
and
2
you can
and
dolly.
you can zoom in, zoom out.
Yeah.
And then press 3. You can rotate.
Yep.
So she gave me those tips, and also like she helped me work around the camera. If I press the middle, I can go to this page, and I can move the camera. It's right here to the side.
Yeah.
And then
so this is you have multiple
and
views.
Then you can move here and out. So yeah.
Did I talk about this last
So
week?
she just helped me work better, and that's all I learned today. Basically, I don't have any questions. She answered all my questions. She helped me out with the homework.
Yeah, awesome.
Wait, where's my? That's all I have for today. Wait, where's the? That's it. Thank you.
Good job, Jasmine. We're gonna learn all about navigating inside of Cinema 4D and stuff today in class or this week in our lessons. And you guys are gonna, yes, the shortcut keys of how to do that and how to move around and change the tools to change the move the scale and the rotation of objects, and then how to navigate around with your camera, and then using those different views, which I realized I didn't talk to you guys about, but I sent that to someone else because they had a question immediately over the weekend. So but yeah, we're going to talk about that. But that was awesome to share that knowledge and stuff with the class. I always appreciate that. And you guys can always do that as well. If you don't have questions, like sharing something that you learned for the week would be awesome. But let's go over our typography projects so we can get you guys some feedback on these. And we're going to start with Jade. All right, Jade, good job. Overall, I think it looks really good. I like the color combination of everything. There's a jitteriness happening in the video, which I don't know if it has to do with the frame rate or what's going on. So make sure that you're working in 24 frames a second. Maybe I can check this. Let's go back to here. Usually in properties, I can see if you guys rendered these out correctly. And this is a reason why it looks choppy right here, Jade, is because you want to change this. You want to change your settings inside of your compositions, all of them, from 12 frames a second to 24 frames a second. You've got the 1920 by 1080. That's perfect. But this is the reason that it's looking really choppy and not smooth. And we don't want that. We want to work in, other than like hand-drawn animation, we're going to be working in 24 frames a second for the entire semester. And so if you guys are wondering that at a quick glance, the way you access it is, again, you just right click on your video once it's rendered out. You go to properties here, and then under details, you can see under the details tab, you can see all the details of your video there. So you can see that it's 1920 by 1080 at 12 frames a second. And that's a great way to double check that you're hitting all of the requirements for the projects, because in the bottom of these, right, if I go here, you're going to want to make sure that these are 1920 by 1080, because that is usually, there's always a format section of the rubric here worth a certain amount of points. And so you want to, if you want to just double check that, that's a super quick way to do that before you submit it, right? And then you're like, oh, wait, I have to re-render it before I lose points on that. So the other thing is, I think we're missing, let me see here. Let's play this back again. Replay. On this first good, better, best, you want to make sure that your type is always off screen. If you're gonna start from off screen, you want to make sure that it's all the way off screen and not like partially showing right there, right? Because we're introducing the text, and this so you're gonna need to move that off screen more. And then other than that, I think your easing looks pretty, it looks good. You just need to change the frame rate. This looks nice and smooth. Again, the frame rate would make it look better. That one looked good. That one looks nice. Nice. What I would do, I think that when you did this one, Jade, you might have used the title sequence guides that are closer to the center, and I would bring these out more, because it leaves just a little bit of too much negative space right here. And so you kind of want to align this over to that to the left a little bit more this way. So I would nudge this over so that there's just like a little bit of room here, but not this big space. Maybe half this would be nice to bring that over. I would try maybe add just another line of information here other than your email. Maybe it's like, if you have social media, use social media if you want to, right? You can always do a fake one, but whenever you're going to submit this into a client, make sure you update that, right? So if you guys want to do like a non-existent one, you can always do that as well. Just make sure it doesn't exist for someone else, right? It's not like I go through and check your social media accounts there. But in case you don't want other people in class to know. There's also, we're missing two more. You're missing the 3D. Let's go here. You're missing the 3D scene, and then you're also missing the contact information scene of your own design. So you're going to want to redo that and send those in to me in order for you to get full credit on this. But you have until, I think you have until the 18th, so next Monday, to turn this in. That's the date range that you guys have for this project. So if I'm going through these and giving you feedback right now is a great time to return that in, right? And if I put in a grade and you submit it later, just shoot me a message being like, hey, submitted this. Can I get an update on it? I made all the changes that you've suggested. And that's part of the reason I want to give you guys these suggestions now in class, so that you guys have time to make those changes and resubmit it before the module closes for you guys, right? All right, let's see here. Let's kind of move down to the deliverables. That's going to be a common thing throughout this. I promise you, people are going to miss things. All right. Here's Josh's. All right, Josh, you got them all in there. Great job. Cool job with the color coordination throughout it. I like it. I like the blue and the purple. options here. These are not eased separately, so you're going to have to go through and ease these according to what we did in class. I suggest watching the most recent class that we did last week, and you'll know how to do that. Another thing that we have here is the alignment is off, so you want to make sure that you're aligning these all up in the same spot, because the good is off centered. They're off aligned. It's not correct. So you need to work on the curves on that one, right? And then you need to work on because those are linear keyframes. So you definitely need to have easing going on, because that's a whole part of that assignment. The fading works good. You want to also animate the position of these characters as well. Don't forget to animate these, right? So they're going to be closer together and they're going to spread further apart to possibly this could be your endings positions, but they need to be closer together in the beginning, right? All right, I've got a little troublemaker trying to break in. Here looks good. The only thing I want to be able to see these frame by frame, because this media encoder sometimes does not allow me to go that way. And so I'm going to open this project. Hi, little one. Hello. You want to say hello? Well, I open up After Effects. Oh, she's running. I see what it is. You want me to love you on your time. All right, so I'm going to bring these projects in here so I can open these up. Create a folder, import all of them. Where is it under desktop? Nice, I had them up all available here. Stop. Okay. It's going to throw that in as a composition. We don't need that composition. I'm just going to double check these here. All right, and this is great. Let me fit these. All right. We already did Jade's. Let's go to this one here. Perfect. Okay, yes, this is what I saw. You have type that is overlapping here, Josh, and you don't ever want to do that inside of in your animations. You never want the type to like cross over each other. And so you're going to need to change the position of these so that they go in an order, right? From the lowest one to the tallest one, they're going to come down as like a stack, and they're not going to cross each other. So you're going to need to fix that. Let me just continue. So all of your text is, you need to change where the position starts of your name. The position animation begins of your name, right? And then also here as well. We don't want to animate, first of all, they're crossing and then they're animating diagonally. And if you guys remember, we had that on the Miro board. I mentioned not to do diagonal animations for the text. I like these, right? These could animate in an interesting way. Like these could, they do animate in a cool way. They could also like do like a shear. These could be animated diagonally, but not the text. The text needs to be animated. If you're going to do the position, it needs to be either the X only or the Y only, but not both of them at the same time. All right, let me go ahead and do this. And then I would slow your camera movement down of your name here, right? You want it nice and smooth. And this kind of is really quick, and it stops right away. And we don't want it to be that fast. So you can either spread your keyframes out or do less motion, right? And that would help with that. You can also check the easing of your camera to make sure that the easing's a little bit smoother. We're going to learn that a little bit more later though. All right, good job though, Josh, overall. Good job getting that in on time. And we have Natalie. All right, let me play this. Ooh, nice job on that, Natalie. Getting that to settle. Great job on the easing. One thing that Natalie added, and I forgot to talk about last class, and if you guys want to go and re-add this later, you can, but there's blurring happening here. I did talk about it. I think it's in my one lesson that I tagged on there, but you guys can add the motion blur onto your type, and it's going to sell the speed a lot more. Notice the difference between that and mine, for instance. Let's see mine here. It looks good, but it's not, it could be better by adding just the motion blur. And so all I have to do for that is I have to turn the motion blur on. I have to enable it up here. And then if you don't see the little motion blur tag in this area, you just have to go down to the bottom over here and you have to hit this little button to show all of your options there. And then what I will go in and I will select on that layer, this, I'll click that and it'll turn that motion blur on. And then when I play it, it's going to look a lot faster when it's speeding off screen. It's going to look more blurry. Obviously, right now we could, let's see here. Why is that not? Let's do it in here. Good, better, best. I have it turned on there. It has to be done inside of the, there we go. You can't do it on the pre-composition, which is this. You can't do it on the comp there because this isn't moving, right? You have to do it on the layers that are actually moving. So you have to go, I had to go into that and then I had to turn on the motion blur, toggle that on, and then I had to add it to those layers specifically. But look how much faster it's going to look when it goes off screen. It's going to sell that speed more. So if you guys want to do that, you can, to add that in there. Let me go back to your video. Good job on that. That looked cool. I actually don't mind the stroke on the text. Normally I would say not to do that. The only instance where it doesn't look okay is on the word good because it's so small. It's so thin that you can't really see the fill color of it. So something to think about when you're designing, right? We also want to think about the design. That looks great. You could, the only thing I would do here is maybe fill the space in, right? So maybe instead of pushing these letters so far over this way, you might want to just distribute them evenly within this space. So maybe this A comes over this way more, the D comes over a little bit more, and then the E. But overall on that, good job. Let's see if the fading. Yeah, the stroke on this thin stuff, I'm not a big fan of because it looks like something's going on with it. Like, because you can't see that fill, but you kind of can. It's a little odd. So per letter, per word, that looks good. That's nice. Great job on the, good job on the easing on that. The color is really interesting with that invert. That looks nice too. Yeah, Natalie added all that motion blur onto her type and it paid off. That looks nice too. I would just try and keep your camera on your entire name, so your name's always in frame. You don't want only part of it to be in frame. So you might just have to update your camera motion there. But other than that, this looks really nice. Your own custom one. Okay, cool. So one comes from one way, one comes from the other. I'll allow it. If you want to add something a little bit more interesting, I mean, it's like but still a little bit simplified. So if you want to add something a little bit more interesting, you could. But I'll be okay with that. That looks good. Overall, your project is done really well. The spacing's done nicely. Good job on the easing. Good job on adding that motion blur in there. So we have Tristan next. Let's go ahead and play his. Nice job on that, Tristan. Yeah, that looks nice. Good job on that one. The only thing I can see here, created per word, is that in this area, let me see. These are a little too close together, so you might want to change your line spacing there. How do you do that? Let me show you. So your line spacing is this little option here inside of your properties panel. And instead of auto, you might want to just change that up so that the lines aren't touching each other. You don't want your text touching each other from the top or the bottom. And so yours just needs a slight adjustment there. It's nothing majorly, like they're not super overlapping, but still, let's see here. I didn't want to do that. Let's double click this. Okay. So if I click on this section here, and I think I talked about this last class, but I added additional like buffer. I said usually adding 15 to 20 is a good call. And I just had to add a little bit more based on what my font choice was. But yeah, you'll just want to increase or decrease that. And I usually work in whole numbers. I think it did 75 total. And it just makes it so that they're not touching, right? If this Y and this D were closer together, they could be touching, and I might have to increase that a little bit more so they're not, you don't want them to make contact with each other. But if they're not, this looks pretty okay to me. There's a nice little space in between there, a nice padding. And so that's the only thing I would do on this one. But good job. And then I would maybe just nudge your sentences over slightly here, so that they're a little bit, there's a little less negative space right here, right? Because that is pretty obvious when we look at it, that there's a more negative space here than in between the letters specifically. And then this one, this area, if I'm being nitpicky, has less space than this one. So make sure your spacing looks very similar. So you could adjust that as well. But other than that, good job on the animation. Let's continue to play. Oh, cool, Tristan. Cool job on the 3D one. With this, again, no crossing the type, so you just need to change the layers of your information. Remember what I ended up doing here. Let me change the color of these. I'm hitting caps lock, which I don't want to. Let me change the color of the layers real quick so you guys can see them. And notice how I had to sequence my position keyframes so that the bottom one went on first, and then so that they go in the correct order, right? Let me take the rotation off of this. Delete that. Did I do it to that one too? No. Select all these layers, holding down shift, hitting U. Yeah, you want them to go in from the bottom line to the top line in that order. And so these are going to be sequenced differently, right? And if your layer order here is different, right? Like your social media one is on top and your name is on the bottom, the sequencing here will look like an opposite stack, right? So instead of going this way, it'll probably go this way as far as like how your keyframes are sequenced. So I would just do that for that one. And then you're missing the contact information of your own design. A lot of people miss that one. And then this one, I would just increase the timing of this so that we can see this on screen a little bit more. And then possibly try and center the framing a little bit. So maybe what you do is you bring your camera down a little lower, or you can pull out of your scene, extend your studio backdrop, and that's what I would do. And then move your camera down a little lower, and then you shouldn't have an issue. Or what you could do is you could angle your camera up a little bit more. Good job though, overall. Let's go to Melissa. Good, better, best looks nice. Let me see here. I don't know if this is 1920 by 1080. Let's find out. Oops. So here's a shortcut for you guys. If you want to make a panel large, like full screen, so you can see everything in it, if you click over that panel and you hit the tilde button, which looks like this, right? The tilde is that button right here. Let me see if I can type it. Wrong. Shift. That's the tilde key. It's in the upper left corner of your keyboard. And if you hover over something, you hit that tilde key, it'll make it full screen. So if you hit it again, it'll bring it back down. So you can do that to any of your panels if you want to. But I'm going to do this, and then I want to see a little bit more information on your thing. Let's see here. I want to see frame rate of everyone's. Let's check the frame rate right here. Tristan. We already talked about Jade's one. Tristan, make sure you're at 24, not 23.976. I know it's like a micro fraction of what 24 is, but you want to work in even numbers here. So just because it becomes easier when it comes to dividing things up, the 23.976 is those those frame rates where there's a decimal after is what cameras film at. And so you want to make sure that you're not working in that, because we're not working with footage right now. We're working with created imagery by scratch. So you just want to, let me see here, make sure that you're working in 24 and not the point whatever. Let me hide the comments. I am just right clicking on this bar here, and then hovering over columns to see what I want to see. I want to see the video info. Okay. And here was my suspicion, is that we're not working at 1920 by 1080. So if I just move this over like this and increase it, I can see however, like everyone's video information. So it looks like, Melissa, you need to change this, right? We need this in 1920 by 1080. And also Keith, yours got away from you too. And so it's smaller than average. It's not like a standard, it's not what we work in, right? We're always working in 1920 by 1080. And kind of like Lena had that issue where she rendered her Cinema 4D project smaller in standard definition. Totally fine for that, because it takes up less time to render. She just scaled it inside of her composition, which was still 1920 by 1080. So when she renders it, her final video is still 1920 by 1080, even though that Cinema 4D render is smaller, right? And so you're going to want to make sure that you guys are doing that when you're rendering out your project. So always make sure that your compositions inside of After Effects are always 1920 by 1080 at 24 FPS. So these are great examples right there. That's what you want to see. And so if you guys want to bring this information up too, so that you can see that, you just, again, right click here, hover over columns, and make sure that you check video information and frame rate information. And then you can even select the type, and it'll tell you like if it's an MP4 or not. Where's type up here? It just says right here that it's a video format. So, but I can see at the end of your guys's namings of your videos of the renders that it says MP4. And so I'll hit the tilde key to go back to this. and we'll continue playing. So yeah, that's the reason I can tell is because there's black bars at the bottom and the top of your video right here, right? And so I can tell that, okay, this is not the correct size of the composition. We need to change that. But other than that, the easing looks really nice. Very nice on that. And we're working with Melissa's right now. The fade looks nice. Good job on that. I would move this, just decrease the size here or the space a little bit. That must have been in the tutorial video, but you guys can change that. The Melissa Richards, your contact information looks nice. See, there we go. Cool. Very interesting. Let me see here real quick. Let me watch this again. Yeah, the easing on that looks great. Adding that motion blur on there looks really nice. That looks really cool. The fade off looks really nice. I would, you know what? That was neat. Thank you for your time at the end. That's a great, very smart thinking ahead, because this is going to be at the end of your reel. You must have thought of that. And so this is really nice. It's like a nice little surprise. That's what I mean by unique, right? That's a very unique aspect to it. And I would say to speed this up, this black layer, the adjustment layer going up, but you know, it fades in time with, like, as it hits the top of the screen, the rest of your text fades off, and I enjoy that. So good job on that. And then just that's nice. And that's what I kind of mean for everyone. You want to kind of keep it centered. I would just maybe extend the time on this slightly on your 3D scene as well. But good job overall. Just make sure you change the aspect ratio of your video, or the size, 1920 with 1080. All right, Jesus, let's go over your project. Yeah, good job on the easing there. Okay, let's keep the sentences the same as in class. So, will I be faded? Who knows? Will you be faded? Yeah, let's just keep this. Text will fade per word, and then text will fade per line, right? Or per letter. So per letter, per word. You kind of want to stick to what was in class, because what is being, the point of what those sentences say, what is being said on screen, right? What that sentence is saying is exactly the action that's happening. So we want those to match up. Also, you want to bring this E over, or this F over, a little bit more this way. It's a little too far off screen. There's a very fine line to where it's too far off screen to where it's too close to the edge, right? And so you're going to want to move that over to the right a little bit more. And then same with this E. You don't want this E to be off screen. We're going to keep that entire E on screen. It almost looks like this is ending where this is beginning. But for the example here, I would just shuffle the AD and E over this way a little bit more, so the full entire E is showing, and then that F is just slightly over. Also, the only other thing is that, let me clear this off here, that you want these to line up, right? So you want the alignment of this text here to be in alignment with this, the top of the word fade. And so you're going to want to bring this down a little bit. You're going to have to tighten the distance between these lines here so that they fit within this. Or what you could do is increase the size of the word fade, but I think this will be a quicker fix for you. Let's go on to the next one. Yeah, nice job on your easing there. You could even sequence your name back a little bit. Just just move your keyframes back a little bit slightly so that they don't look like they're touching. No, I think you're okay there. I'm okay with that. The only thing I would do for this one is I would move your... I know I said to keep these tight. Exceptions being names with like P's, with lowercase p's, lowercase g's, lowercase y's, where you have the little tail that hangs off of the letter and it hangs below the line. So I would just try to bring that down a little bit, the adjustment layer, so that it's not changing the bottom part of the G, and see how it looks. But I'm not going to be a super stickler on that. It's okay to me either way. That's nice. Okay. I really liked, I think that it needs to be longer, your 3D name, the name in 3D. But the motion, it's a very subtle camera movement. And that's kind of what I want you guys to get into the thought of, is when there's something on screen like this, you want that motion to be nice and subtle, so it's like really showing it off, and it's just a very slow rotation or a very slow movement instead of something really fast. You want to be able to read that name, almost like, do you guys remember on like Windows screensavers where like the name would slowly, whatever, you could change it, the text, to anything you wanted it to say, and then it would just kind of slowly move around your screen, and that was your screensaver. Like, think of that, right? That slow moving camera, to just show off your name. And so I would just extend this video a little bit longer, and that's all I would do. All right, Keith, so we're going to look at yours. We already talked about the size of the video, so I would just change that. The good, better, best looks really nice. I'm not seeing overshooting with any of your guys' videos, which is awesome. Keith, you've got the motion blur on all of those, which is great. This looks really nice. Yeah, I think in my other video I left like a big space in here. So because of that, and because I'm seeing it across everyone's, I'm realizing that that was like what the previous lesson said. So if you guys don't want to change it, I'm not gonna dock points for that because it was in my video. So but now in my mind I would probably move these over a little bit. You can if you want to, you don't have to. Let's see. Let me go back a little here. That looks good. You might want to line these up a little bit more, so you can just increase the size of these two lines here, so that they fit on the top and the bottom, and then that'll kind of fill up this little space right there. Ooh, we're supposed to get a thunderstorm warning, or we're supposed to get a thunderstorm. Thankfully, I don't know about you guys, but I love the rain. Okay, let's keep playing this. Yeah, Keith, that's not bad. The only thing that I see here is the backdrop, like the edge of your black backdrop is showing. And so you can either punch it on the camera or not rotate the camera that much. I would probably not rotate it as much. So it keeps your name is centered the entire time. You just don't want the letters to be cut off there. So maybe I would what I would do for yours is I would pull the camera back a little bit so that your name is set further back, right? It's called dollying. When you push in, you're dollying in, and then you're dollying out when you're pulling the camera out. And so I'd pull out of the shot so that your name is a little bit smaller and more centered, not touching the edges. And then I just would slow rotate and not as far. So I would just decrease the angle of rotation there. But it looks really nice. Good job on the materials and stuff. And then I think you're just, the other one I think I skipped over here. That looks nice. We just need one more contact information from you. So I'm going to count this one, Keith, as the one we did in class because I use that as an example. So I want to see something of a little more creativity. with that one. Like a little bit more originality when it comes to your own personal one there. Let me move here. Lena's. Let's go ahead and play yours. Looks good there, Lena. Let me see. Is your... There's something... Is there something odd happening here? So I don't think there's anything odd happening here. What I think it is that you need to pull your just pull your text off screen a little bit further, and then it won't because they're coming to a stop, and I can see that stop as it's like going off screen, and we don't want to see that. We want to see it just quickly go there and not slow down. So I would just, all you got to do is go to those last keyframes and move the position further off screen. And then you won't see any of that slowing down. We just want it to fully speed off screen. Oh, I didn't mean to click this. Let's go back to your thing here. Yeah, but other than that, good job. Looks nice. Everyone's really aligned. I'm getting good videos this time here because before that looks good. That looks nice. Good job fading it off. That looks nice. Very smooth there, Elena. Good color choices. Nice. Animated it off screen. There we go. That's cool. Ooh, and you did per letter, right? Nice. That's what I'm talking about. Creativity with these, right? Taking what you've learned and applying it to these. I would probably, the only thing I would do here is I would have your name animate on first, and then your information comes, never mind. I'm going to take that back because your information comes from the top part of the screen down. And so you actually did this perfectly. You made the correct choice in that. And so I appreciate it. And for which keyframes? So like your end keyframes. So what I meant by that is I'll go to the easing. And you've got your words animating on screen, which looks great. Let me move this back a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. And then it's going to animate off screen. Mine kind of does the same thing too. So what I would do here is I would just move your playhead to these last keyframes here and select all of the layers and then just scoot the position further off screen. And so that way you might see them start to slow down a little bit, but it's not coming to almost a complete stop while it's still on screen. So it kind of zooms off still a little bit quicker. I would just do it slightly. I see mine did similar to that, so I won't mark you for that because my example was very similar to that as well. But very good job on your being creative on this personal information there, your contact information. This looks really nice, by the way. Did you you change the colors of your lights? That flash on screen was my computer. It was my GPU and not your video. I'm just letting you know. That's my computer thing. It just does that sometimes. I don't know why. But I'm going to double click on this, go back here, play it again. Yeah, that's lovely. That's a great camera movement, great timing on that. I wouldn't change anything about it. I really appreciate the softness of your shadows back here. The color, I don't even know if you change the color of your lights. It just might be the backdrop color and the way the fall off is of the lighting. But it looks very nice, Lena. Really good job on the 3D one as well. Overall, great job. All right, and then Jasmine, final one to go over. Good job on that, Jasmine. Good job on the fade as well. Oh, I paused it. Lena asked, yes, I played with the color temperature of the lights. Yeah, it looked really nice. I could definitely see that there was like a warmness. It's like a, but it created a very purpley look to it. It looks really cool. Let me go back here. The fade on this looks really good, Jasmine. Nice job sequencing the letters. Good job on that one. Now, that is cool. Some of you guys are coming up with some really interesting, like, information about this. It's like you separated the letters. I would almost play on this a little bit more. And what you could do is separate all of the letters and have them all come in at different, like, land at the same time, right? But kind of start at different times as they're coming in. But so they all settle down in the same spot at the same time. You're going to work backwards. You're going to animate backwards, right? With that one. So you'll start here with all the letters. You'll have them all separated out. They'll animate the position there. And then you're going to move your playhead backwards. And then you'll move them off screen. And then you'll just change the position of those first keyframes on the timeline so that they start at different times, but they all end at the same time. But yeah, no, this is cool. I'm into it. Let me rewind this again. I want to watch it again. And then you're scaling. You're also scaling you're scaling your letters separately as well. You're scaling the separate shapes. That's cool because you're overlapping a lot of the skills that we've learned. I'm pretty sure you're scaling that and it's not faux 3D. But yeah, that's neat. Cool. Good job there. Cool color combination of that. This is really good too, Jasmine. Really great job on that slow moving camera from here. The only thing I might do is just slightly change the angle of your, so maybe it starts here and not so far forward. It starts there, so it's a little bit easier to read. But that looks really nice overall. Really good job. Good job on these projects, you guys. I'm impressed with what I've seen so far. Cool. All right, so we're done with that. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left of class, 25 minutes. I'm going to teach you actually a little bit more of like, instead of jumping into the next lesson for the real and surreal, I'm going to teach you guys a different way to animate typography so that you guys can apply this to projects later on in the course. And you can also maybe apply some of these options in this one and resubmit it, right? Because any of this feedback that I'm giving you right now, you have the chance to change it until the 18th and then resubmit that video for full credit on that, because some of these things will deduct points if you leave them like that, but you know, you guys always have the option, right? So, but nothing I see majorly on anyone's formatting a little bit, some minor stuff, but no one's like failed the entire assignment. Apologize, I'm a little sleepy. So I'm going to shut my camera off real quick. And I'm going to create a new composition here. I'm going to delete these. Yes, delete. And we're going to add a new composition, and I'm going to name this Text Animators. And so this is going to, we're going to kind of get in depth with those little text animators that I kind of showed you guys about last time. We're going to talk more about that. And I'm going to kind of show you a different way to view them and kind of, I'm going to do it with symbols so that you guys can see how it looks. So I'm going to draw a line, or I'm going to create a line of text, but it's just a hyphen. And I am going to center that, center the anchor point, and then I'm going to go to my align panel and I'm going to align this in the middle of my composition. I'm going to hit V and select my selection tool. And I'm actually going to shut this title action sequence off so you can just see what we're working with here. Now, imagine this is a series of letters. It's spelling something out, right? I can also do this. Let me duplicate this, move it down, and we'll put my name in here. And whatever we do with one, we can see what it looks like with text, right? So I'm going to grab this, and it's close to centered with the anchor point. I'm just going to hit V in here, and I'm going to drop that down. Or bring it up here. All right, that works. Now, instead of animating just the position rotation in scale, right? I can hit P, S, T, and animate those properties, rotation, which is fine, right? That's not anything wrong with it. But there's just limited capabilities when you're animating text from these transform properties in this way. But there's another option. So if I unfurl this entire thing, and I'm going to furl up this transform property, and instead I'm going to focus on this little arrow button that says animate over here. And so I'm going to close that up, and I'm going to click this little arrow, and there's going to be a whole set of options that kind of pop up for me. And the ones I want you guys to kind of focus on right now are like the position, the scale. You can look at the rotation and opacity, right? So all of our normal transform properties. But also you can add in here blur, and we can start looking at tracking. I wouldn't really recommend I wouldn't do anything with anchor points, right? I wouldn't do anything with skew because we're not trying to skew text. So anything with anchor, the skew, don't worry about that. You guys can mess around with fill color, stroke color, those things if you want to. Line spacing, I probably wouldn't mess around with that either because I don't really do that often. But you can, you guys can always like experiment with these, right? Character offset, character value, not such a big one, but usually just the main transform properties here, position, scale, rotation, opacity, and then adding in blur can do a lot more, okay? And so I'm gonna delete this animator. Notice what happens is this text thing unfurls, and then normally it would just have these options here where you have your source text, you have path options, more options. But when I hit this animate button and I select an option here, like position, it's going to add a little like folder section that says animator 1, and then it's going to open this up and say range selector and position. Whatever one I selected is going to be named right there. And so what this position does is this is where you want the change to start from, right? So if it's position, I want this position to start from down below, and then I want it to end up at these at my main position, right? So this is kind of where you want the action to start from. And so I'm going to type in 50 there on the Y axis. And then I am going to keyframe this. So instead of keyframing the position there, I'm going to unfurl the range selector. And you're going to see that there's a start and an offset option with an advanced tab underneath. We're going to kind of go through these and just see what each one of them does. So the starting and end point is your starting of your animation and your ending of your animation. So if I change this value of the start, you're going to see that there is this tiny little marker right here, and then there's one right here, right? This is the start of your text, and here is the end of your text. So that start value, if I start changing that start value, it's adjusting the position per character. So per letter is being changed based on where the starting tab is, right? I'll call it a starting tab. Now the ending tab over here does the same thing. It always starts at 100 because if I go to 0, from 0 to 100, none of the position is being affected right now, right? The starting is at 0, the ending is still at 100. But as soon as I start to move that, it's affecting where those little tabs are, and that's what's affecting your text, right? And so notice that these can all be keyframed. Now, if I wanted just this section of my text to animate, I could, like if I wanted, like for instance, we're using this line, right? So if I just wanted this section of line to animate through almost like a wave, I could say I only want 30% of that line to be animated, right? So I could start at 0 from the start and then type in 30 here because I only want 30% of the line to be affected. And then I could animate the offset, right? If I move this over here to 1 and then I change the offset, it's always going to be 30% of the word that's being affected. It's always going to have that 30%, but it's just it's going to move it through, like it's shuffling it through. That's what that offset button does. And so let's say I wanted it to be, this is the power of the offset, right? Because I could animate the start and the end, which would be okay, but the offset is really where all that power lies. So let's say I only wanted 50% of the word to be showing, right? So at all times, 50% of the word or line or text that I have there is being affected by this animator, right? This area is essentially your animator from the start to the end tab. Well, let's go ahead and bring this back to 100. And we're going to bring my playhead to the beginning, and I'm going to unanimate the offset. And so the determination of like how that line is moving up, right, is from where your start position was, which is right here, and your end position is where you initially had your options. So you want it to be centered up on the anchor point there. That's where you want it to end up. That's your ending position. Where you want it to start at, which is below, is the position that you would put here. So that looks nice and all. And I know I mentioned last time that we had that square option. So let me do this. Let me type in, here's another way to do the math on if you want only a certain percentage of your line to show or of the word or text to be affected by the animator. If you, so if I wanted to have 40% of my text, being affected by the animator, I could always put 20, like I want it to start at 20%, and then I would just add 40% to that, which would give me 60, and that way I only have 40% of the text being affected by the animator, right? And so I can move this along if I want to and animate that offset. I can leave it there. Now notice that this is kind of squared off, right? This shape looks like you could almost fit a box into it, like a rectangle, right? Oops, not wanting to do that. I want to make sure I'm not selected on anything. And then I am going to create a box which fits perfectly into that zone of where it's being affected, right? Now that is because of the shape of our animator right down here. The shape of the animator is square. So we can change that and it will give a different look to this. So if I delete this shape right here, or if I just hide it, and then I change this from square to ramp up, notice how it looks like this, it looks like a ramp, right? And so the text is ramping up to the final position, right? So this, it looks like a down ramp, right? That's what you would think, but it's all about the way the text ends at the end of the animation. So it's ramping that text up. When I move it, that's what you guys can see. It's ramping it up to the final position. From the start position to the final position, it's ramping up. Now there's the opposite of that. That's ramping down. So from it's moving that text down to the final position. So there's different options that you can do, and just kind of depending on how you want that text to animate on screen. Now notice when I changed the shape to ramp up or ramp down, all of a sudden this offset option allows us to go into the negatives, right? So it'll go from -100 to 100. I can't give you the exact definition of why that happens, but all I know is that when I do change it to ramp up or ramp down, right? So I'll change this to ramp up. I usually work with that. I will keyframe the offset at -0 because that's how much of it's being affected. None of it right now to fully being affected. And so when I play this back, it's going to look like a wave, right? That ramping up and ramping down gives it kind of this wave effect. So if I did this to the text above, if I just copy this animator to my name, and then I play this, notice how the letters are affected differently. So it's changing the position of the letters directly versus changing the whole line of text or just the single word alone. Now, the power of this, right, is if obviously I can make it affect characters by itself, but I can also change it from being based on characters to being based on words, or you can do lines, or you can do characters excluding spaces. So if I did words, it's going to just move this up in 2 chunks, right? Let me change that there, but then it also has to be changed. Should work with just changing it there. Oh, that's because I'm in that. I need to do it here. If I hit U, it only brings that up because I only have the offset. I'd have to go to advanced, and then I change it from characters to words. Now when you watch it, it's going to move this up in sections of words, right? It's grouping those words. Notice how it's doing the same for this. So now all of a sudden it doesn't look like a ramp that's moving through, or a wave that's moving through that line. It's just from the bottom to the top. It's just one solid move because this is one single line of text, which would equal one single word. You can also do lines, like if you have multiple lines, which is nice. The cool thing also about this, right? I usually do characters. It makes it a little bit more interesting looking. But if I move this to the center here, right? So we can see that ramp up happening. And I start to mess with my easing, high and low, I can see what my curve is going to start to look like, right? So I can see that it's going to slowly move into that final position there. And then if I start increasing the ease low, you can start to see that it's going to change this to look almost like an S curve, right? Which is really neat. When you're doing this with the hyphens or with some kind of shape or symbol, you can really see what's actually happening with your text versus if you just have it in like a word or a text. Like this gives you a visualization as a single line, which makes it a little bit easier to see. So your easing is actually happening here in a percentage base versus having to ease your keyframes. You don't actually have to ease your keyframes when they're in here. If you want the easing to happen, you have to change it inside here, right? So if I do 50-50, you're going to see it's going to be a perfect S curve that goes through. And now it's going to nice and smooth kind of whip that. It looks more like that wave, right? The other cool thing about this is you can randomize the order of which ones are being affected. So if I play it like that, it looks like they're kind of all separated. Each character is going to be separate, right? Remember, it'll be based on your mode that you're working in here or whatever it's based on. So if I did words, it's going to all move into one single one. Let's not look at, I'm going to shut my name off there because I want you to just focus on this line real quick. But as soon as I change that to characters, you can see how it's being affected right there, right? So if these were all separate letters, they would all be pulling up and changing position right there. Now, this is cool and all, but let's say I didn't want my text to be visible when it's at the bottom, only when it's at the top. What's really neat about this is that you can add additional properties to these animators. So I want to add an opacity property so that it starts off fully transparent and then it goes fully opaque. Now, when I add a property to this first animator right here, it is going to keep the same keyframes, right? So all I have to do is bring this down to what I want it to start at, which I want it to start at 0%. And it's going to, the offset, the start, the range selector right here with the start, end, and offset is going to still affect the opacity the same that it affects the position, because this additional property is within this first animator. If we didn't want them to be the same, we would have to add an additional animator on its own if we want the properties to have different effects, right? Or different keyframes. We want them to happen at different times. If we want them to happen at the same time, you have to add it with this add button into that same animator right there, right? And so I drop this down to 0 because I want it to start at 0%. And then I want it to fade on while the position is changing as well. So if I play this now, all of a sudden it fades into view, right? It fades from 0 to 100% with the same easing and the same offset value that it did with the position, right? Because I've just added it there. Now, if I want it to be separate, I would delete this right now, the opacity. Let's delete that. And then I would add, let me undo that real quick. I'm just going to delete that opacity there. I'm going to rename this animator 1 to position change, because keeping things organized is important. And I realize we're coming close on time, so I'm going to wrap this up shortly here. We're right at the end. But let's say I wanted this to happen over the 1 second, the position, but I wanted the opacity to happen over 12 frames, right? A half a second. So I would go in here and I would select a second animator, which would be the opacity. I would change the name here to opacity change. And I would bring my playhead all the way to the beginning. I would change the opacity to what I want it to start at. And I would drop down my range selector. I'm going to drop down my advanced tab, and I am going to change this to ramp up again. It doesn't have to match, but I personally like to match them up. And so now if I go like this, right, it's only because I changed that shape to ramp up, it's only making half of this transparent, which I want the full thing. So I have to make sure I move this offset to -100, right? And I'm going to keyframe it at -100. I'm going to bring that to 12 frames, and then I'm going to bring this value all the way up to 100. That -100 really only happens with the ramp up, ramp down. It might happen with the smoothing, because I think the smoothing looks like a curve more or less, right? But let's change that back to ramp up. And now when I play it, the opacity animation is happening quicker. Do I like this? Not necessarily. It's not my favorite. But maybe I could add something to this opacity to make it look a little bit cooler, right? So maybe instead of adding a new animator, I want it to blur at the same time that it has the opacity. And so I'll just crank this blur